Howdy everyone, my name is Jess, welcome to Sunshine Express, and normally this is a blank piece of paper, but for this one I had to kind of prepare because I'm twiddling with some things. Anyway, so we're in the quantum state, right? And we're going to talk about quantum entanglements per personal relationships, okay? So we learned all about the DC method and in the quantum state if it's one singular person, right? Here's me and my pizza dress. But what happens when you meet somebody else? And your orbits start overlapping with each other and you start becoming quantum entangled, or you build bonds, or you build community, okay? Or you build friendships, relationships, romantic partnerships, okay? What does that really look like on an energetic level, okay? Let's check it out. I've been percolating on this video for like the last couple of weeks and it's taken shape enough that I'm going to try and attempt something. So let's see. Okay, so a couple of things beforehand. We have the DC method up here, right? Detach, avoid, expand, inspire, create, level up, and enjoy, okay? And remember, we're talking about level of consciousness, and so let's say that this isn't Hertz. And what that means is your level of awareness, or it's your level of magnetism that you have in your body, okay? This is how much fear you've cleared out of your body. This is how much you've expanded, how much you've grown, how much you've seen of the world, how much you've experienced from the lows to the very, very highs, okay? The world is infinite, the universe is infinite, so you probably will not experience everything that the world has to offer you by the time you transition physically into nothingness when you die. But you can experience a lot of it, okay? And so depending on your level of consciousness, of your level of awareness, you're going to meet another person and they're going to have their own unique level of awareness. And just based on what you guys end up talking about, you'll see how strong the bonds can be. And then we'll talk about what happens when you keep like elevating in your level of consciousness and they stay the same, okay? So let's say here's me, and let's say this is new girl, Megan, okay? This is Jess, this is Megan. We are both EMTs, and we found each other, or we started working with each other just super randomly, and our dimension of being an EMT has many, many, many inner dimensions, right? I've done, hundreds of events so far, I've met so many people and blah, 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 I've seen so many medical cases, like emergency scenarios, and so has Megan. And so we're going to, oh, hey, how's it going? My name is Jess. My name is Megan. How are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. Situational awareness. Oh, you're an EMT. How long have you been an EMT for? Okay. Data exchange, right? How long have you been an EMT for? Data exchange. Oh, do you work on an ambulance? Data exchange. Do you only do events? Data exchange. What are the cases that you've seen? What's the most interesting thing that you've ever seen? Blah, 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 blah. So this is how you create a bond with somebody, right? You're bonding. This is a quantum entanglement, okay? And as we go through this, I want you to think about relationships that you've had, that you formed, friendships, romantic, other colleague, whatever. And how many times have you had this data exchange, this bond formed, and then you've broken up with them? And what has happened in the grief of detanglement, the conscious uncoupling, right? The breaking apart, the divorcing, okay? Just keep that in mind as we keep going. So that's great. So we've formed a bond. It's been an hour. We've talked about EMT stuff. We've gotten to know each other a little bit. I found out about her that she has another job as childcare. I don't really hang out with children. Let's just call myself child free for all intents and purposes. Okay. I like to paint murals. I do jujitsu. I do church work. Okay. I'm 35. I like singing, and I've done and I'm sober. Okay. Let's just say that. And then for her, let's say that she's 20. How many? This might not match up. I can't count. Let's say she's 28. Her job is at a bank. Her hobbies are horseback riding. She paints by numbers. Okay. She dances. She does ballet instead of music. And she likes to drink. She's a drinker. Excuse me. Okay. So we've gotten to know each other, right? We just opened up each other's dimensions and we kind of have a basis of conversation. Let's say this is an 8-hour shift, right? We're talking to each other for 8 hours. So we go through the shift, blah, blah, blah. Maybe we respond to some medical calls, whatever. But we start talking about these things. And I'm going to tell her, she's going to say, oh, I was hungover today and blah, 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 blah. And so she's going to hit this dimension for me, right? Or she's going to actually hit my drinking dimension, right? If I'm leveling up in consciousness this way, she's going to hit this dimension and this dimension, right? Her bringing up this topic to my consciousness is going to open, we're not going to talk about church work if she's talking about drinking, right? My relative understanding of what she's about to tell me is from either my drinking past or my sober present, okay? So she's going to tell me all these drinking stories. I will relate. I will ask her what her favorite thing is, blah, 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 blah. And then I might drop that I'm actually currently sober, okay? As I tell her I'm sober, she has not walked the sober path yet. Or maybe she has, but for all intents and Megan has not. But she has a brother who is in addiction recovery, okay? So now we're talking about it. She's a drinker, but now my sobriety stuff is landing here, okay? But it's not going to be as strong as the EMT stuff because she personally has not gone through this, right? So this is a really weak bond, okay? Same thing. Singing, I don't do ballet, but we exchange some information about that, but it really kind of just lands outside of my awareness, right? This is like no man's land, right? It's going to fall on deaf ears, is colloquially what people say, right? Basically, when you have an expertise in a subject, you're going to start learning a new vocabulary, a new pacing, a new understanding, choreo, all of these new words, languages. It's pretty much a foreign language. So even if you speak English with each other, do you know what a pas de bourrée is? Do you know what a pirouette is? Do you know? So you're actually, well, that's French, but but when you start talking about these things, if I don't have any awareness what ballet is, you can talk my ear off and I'm going to look at you like I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, because I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I don't have that level of consciousness. I don't have that level of awareness. I have not opened that dimension yet. It is still sight unseen, okay? So we, over the next 4 or 5 days or whatever, see each other a couple more times and we talk about this, blah, 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 okay? And like maybe we go out a couple of times and say hi to each other, grab dinner, whatever, and kind of form a little bit of a friendship. But for the most part, we're not very strongly bonded. Unless it's like EMT, right? We talk about this, we talk about this, we talk about this, right? None of this really develops because we're just so not really opening, our interests are not really the same, right? We're not gravitating towards the same things, which is totally fine. Everyone has their own unique path, right? But let's say I'm doing the DC method and Megan is not. Megan is very happy to be at 200 hertz and I'm at 200 hertz currently, but I am walking the path of the DC method, or I'm walking the path of internal elevation or what have you, right? So I am actually starting to boost up to 300 hertz, right? And I'm opening up all of these new dimensions. And she's, instead of having new experiences in new dimensions, she's having more experiences and actually getting into a deeper mastery in the current dimensions that she has open. For whatever reason, maybe she's 28, maybe she doesn't care, maybe she knows and she doesn't want to do the work, or maybe she has done the work, turned around, doesn't really give a crap. Whatever the reason is, she's at 200 hertz, I have an interest in pursuing more of the infinite, okay? So this is what's going to happen. Over time, say you're at 200 hertz, this is you, and you're really only going, you're really only going to meet this person, you're going to intertwine, and you're going to intersect a little bit. But as you start elevating and moving up your levels of consciousness, this person is going to do this. If they're completely content with where they are in life, okay, or maybe they're not content, but they don't want to find a different way, they're going to stay here and you're naturally going to part pathways, okay? Again, remember the friendships that came together and then suddenly you walked a different path in life, right? You're walking a different timeline, okay? So and that doesn't necessarily mean that what she's doing is bad, what you're doing is bad, it's just different, okay? So if she keeps drinking, she is depressing her nervous system, okay? And she cannot move up levels of consciousness because of the way that alcohol interacts with the brain and body. It's just, you just cannot do that. You cannot become more sensitive to the invisible energetic universe if you still drink alcohol. There's so much more. There's a lot of superpowers you gain, but you have to ditch the alcohol. You have to detach from it in order to expand. Okay. So you're on this trajectory, different timelines. And so you're not going to be bonded anymore. Okay. So all of these former bonds that you had are going to become of the past, quote unquote, unquote, right? So instead of talking about all of this, I'm actually going to start forming into a new person. Maybe I get a new job. Maybe I get my red belt in jiu-jitsu and I actually open a gym. Okay. Now I'm actually a business owner. Okay. Maybe I stopped painting murals and I switched to, I made a band. Okay. Okay. So I'm advancing and I'm trying new things. And she's still just diving into her current routine, which again, it doesn't matter, but she's not exploring more of life. She's exploring more of the things that she's doing, which is more of life, but it's not an outward projection. It's more of a downward. Okay. So as I move forward, right, and she cannot move this. If she keeps drinking alcohol, she can't move. So I'm advancing my levels of consciousness. What this is going to do is I'm going to start having a giant magnetic pull, gravitational orbit, okay? And because her magnetism is not as heavy as mine, what's going to happen is it's going to start repelling, okay? She's actually going to start being repelled by me because she's not going to be able to understand what I'm saying. And I'm not going to be able to understand what she's saying. She's going to start talking about equestrian competitions. That's really cool. We'll have a 5-minute conversation about it. I'll talk to her about being a business owner. She has absolutely no interest in that, okay? The bonds are going to start breaking apart, okay? And so what ends up happening is that these previous old bonds, which were high frequency at one point, are now turning into low frequencies, okay? And what's happening is that they're being pulled apart and now they have nowhere to really land, okay? These have nowhere to land. So as you guys are parting ways, levels of consciousness, you're going through a detach, okay? At one point, this relationship was high frequency and maybe now it's either a neutral relationship or it's become low frequency where maybe she's talking about drinking so much and I'm sober and I really don't give a shit about what she's got going on, do not give a fuck. And so I just kind of turn my ears off. And so the bond keeps breaking apart, right? And because depending on how much time you spend with this person, now all of these little plugs that used to be plugged into her quantum are now floating and they're going through the void, okay? And instead of talking about drinking, this is so far in the past, right? You've cleared these levels of consciousness. Now you want to talk about building a community center, okay? This is going to fall nowhere on her. And then you're going to start, as you keep ascending upwards, you're going to find people who are maybe at 500 hertz where you are now. Okay. And so maybe now you're only going to seek out people, or maybe you can only see people who have a certain level of consciousness, which is business owners. Okay. All that, blah, 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 blah. However, that does not mean you're better or worse than anyone else. It's just what you are looking for in life. Now, if you are very aware of how the whole quantum is, you will be able to slide across all of these dimensions very easily. You're not going to close yourself off to anyone. If you're very good at being able to alchemize energy and all that, you're actually going to be able to upkeep this relationship no matter what, if you so wanted to or whatever, because you're not actually going to plug out of her. She's going to plug out of you, and it'll be totally fine regardless. So I think that's it. This was a weird one, and I don't have like a catchy like outro speech. All I have to say is that when you are leveling up, okay, you're also detaching from old versions of yourself, and you're going to find people who match with the new version of yourself. And so your social circle, say this is you, okay, you have your inner circle, you have your mid circle, like colleagues, coworkers, and then you have like your acquaintance outside, okay, inner circle, mid circle, outer social circle. And once you start glowing and you start gaining this new reputation, people are going to start being repelled out, and people are going to start being magnetized in. And so you're going to see a very, very swift change of social circles as you're making these frequency jumps. So play with that for a bit until I come up with some other video.